The Ones of Mortis and the Celestials. Begin with the Celestials because they frame what most powerful means in Star Wars cosmology. Legend sources describe the Celestials as an ancient, reality-shaping species credited with arranging celestial mechanics on a galactic scale, moving planets, constructing super-engineering artifacts, and imprinting order onto the early galaxy. Their direct appearances are scarce. What survives are their works and their incarnate proxies. The clearest, most accessible manifestation of celestial will is the Ones, a triad of immortal force wielders, father, son, and daughter, who reside within the Mortis realm, a pocket dimension removed from normal space-time. The father embodies balance, the son embodies the dark side, and the daughter embodies the light. This framework matters because it is not a metaphor. In narrative terms, they operationalize force metaphysics. When the daughter diminishes, environments wither. When the sun surges, equilibrium collapses. Their scale of effect signals that they interface with the force at a level beyond normal Jedi or Sith, shaping ecosystems, matter, and minds directly rather than through conventional abilities. Two force nexuses on their origin world, the font of power and the pool of knowledge, explain the asymmetry between the siblings. The father warned his children to avoid both, not because he feared learning, but because contact amplifies polarity to destabilizing extremes. The son drank from the font and became a hypercharged conduit of the dark side. The daughter bathed in the pool and became an equally potent conduit of the light. The immediate result was territorial polarization and endless civil conflict between the siblings, with the father acting as a stabilizer who prevented either pole from erasing the other. This dynamic is crucial to understand. Their conflict is not simple family drama. It is the living force pulled to extremes by beings who can project will into the fabric of reality. Recorded capabilities include spontaneous generation of living matter, destruction of life with a thought, shape-shifting into monstrous or avian forms for symbolic and tactical leverage, and compulsion or essence transfer that can override a mortal's agency. Each example is a force outcome with no intermediate steps or technological mediation, distinguishing the Ones from even the most accomplished Sith Lords or Jedi Masters. A mortal mother temporarily stabilizes the family and shows that social inputs can modulate cosmological forces, but only to a point. Initially, a servant who wins the father's affection, she channels the son's destructive drive into creation, for example, using his lightning to carve structures and reduces open conflict. However, she ages while the immortals do not, and her need to remain part of the triad pushes her toward the very nexuses the father forbade. Contact with both the font of power and the pool of knowledge corrupts her synthesis into something qualitatively new. Abeloth, a chaotic immortal whose scale of agency exceeds either child's. The instant outcome is subjugation of son and daughter until the father extracts them and evacuates their world. This episode demonstrates a pattern you will see repeatedly with apical force entities. Attempts to shortcut balance through absolute empowerment generate instability that cannot be contained within normal spacetime. The Ones respond by resorting to megastructures, e.g., center point station, and astrophysical engineering, the Moore's black hole cluster, to trap Abeloth, then withdraw to Mortis, a segregated realm, because keeping balance may demand removing the balancing agents themselves from the temporal galaxy. Mortis functions as both sanctuary and circuit breaker. By isolating father, son, and daughter outside linear time, the galaxy is protected from their oscillations, while the father continues to manage the differential between light and dark embodied in his children. During the Clone Wars, the father identifies Anakin Skywalker as the only mortal with sufficient potential to succeed him as guarantor of balance. A controlled test shows scale. Anakin subdues both son and daughter simultaneously, which signals a capacity to supervise the polar forces directly despite his mortality. That outcome is pivotal because it defines Chosen One not just as battlefield aptitude, but as someone whose will can regulate force poles at the Mortis layer. However, subsequent events show how fragile the Mortis system becomes when its safeguards are compromised. The son obtains the Dagger of Mortis, a unique weapon capable of killing immortals, and in the attempt to assassinate the father, the daughter is slain. This single loss precipitates ecological collapse on Mortis. Flora die, light recedes, demonstrating that removing a pole does not eliminate the energy, it unbalances the domain that contains it. The father's response, suicide via the dagger to distract the son, allows Anakin to kill the son and end the immediate threat, but it also extinguishes the triad. With father, son, and daughter gone, Mortis dissolves. The Jedi are returned to their prior position in real space, and all material traces of the realm vanish. The practical implication is twofold. First, balance is no longer actively regulated by the Father's will at the Mortis layer, so the galaxy's force ecology loses its metronome. Second, safeguards built by or with the ones to contain extragalactic scale risks weaken without their custodians. This is not an abstract concern. The later destruction of Centerpoint Station destabilizes the Maw that imprisons Abeloth, enabling her escape. That chain, loss of Mortis balance, erosion of celestial containment, re-emergence of a chaos-tier entity, illustrates why the Ones are categorized among the most powerful beings. Their presence or absence sets the boundary conditions for whether the galaxy functions, not merely who wins a war within it. Abeloth, the immortal chaos. When considering the hierarchy of power in Star Wars, no being illustrates the danger of uncontrolled imbalance more clearly than Abeloth. Her origin is rooted in the same Mortis framework that birthed the Ones, but her transformation takes her beyond even their immense scale. Originally a mortal woman who became the mother to the father, son, and daughter, Abeloth was not born with force omnipotence, but gained influence through nurturing and guidance. She brought temporary harmony to the siblings, redirecting the son's destructive impulses into creation and calming disputes that could have unraveled Mortis itself. Yet her mortality became the fracture point. While her family remained timeless, she aged, and desperation to hold her place among them pushed her toward the twin nexuses on their world, the font of power and the pool of knowledge. Contact with either alone distorted a being's alignment irreversibly. Contact with both in sequence produced something unprecedented. Abeloth was transfigured into an immortal embodiment of chaos, a force predator whose hunger outstripped even the son's darkness or the daughter's light. Abeloth's power set places her in a category separate from Jedi, Sith, or even Celestials, functioning within balance. Her abilities are protean, encompassing and often exceeding every discipline known to either light or dark practitioners. She could warp the minds of entire populations, spreading a force-born madness called force psychosis that turned Jedi against their allies and destabilized governments. Her physical avatars were resilient against attacks that could obliterate ordinary Sith Lords. She casually reflected Sith lightning with a gesture, incinerating its user without effort. Spatial manipulation was routine. She folded local space to reposition opponents at will, disorienting even masters of combat. Environmental dominance was evident too. On her corrupted homeworld, she animated toxic flora into weapons, directing them to tear apart hostile forces as though the battlefield itself was her ally. Unlike most Force adepts, who extend influence through concentration, Abeloth's influence radiated outward continuously, pressing against the minds of Force sensitives across the galaxy. Containment of Abeloth required not merely strength, but cosmological engineering. The Ones originally trapped her within the Maw, a cluster of black holes stabilized by celestial megastructures like Centerpoint Station. As long as those structures endured, her domain remained sealed. But when Centerpoint was destroyed in later galactic wars, the Maw destabilized and Abeloth escaped, re-entering galactic history with catastrophic effect. Her re-emergence illustrates why she is counted among the most powerful. She was not simply another Darksider seizing territory, she was an existential threat whose presence disrupted the functioning of Jedi and Sith orders alike. Both factions recognized that she could not be allowed to roam freely. Her victory would not have produced a Sith Empire or Jedi-led Republic, but a galaxy twisted into avatars of her own will. Grandmaster Luke Skywalker's encounters with Abeloth confirm her extraordinary durability. Standard Force techniques did little to harm her essence. Killing an avatar reduced her reach, but did not end her. She simply shifted her consciousness into another host or manifestation. True destruction required coordinated action, teams of Jedi and Sith attacking her simultaneously, targeting both her spiritual essence and physical vessels. Even then, victories were partial. Each avatar slain weakened her, but did not erase her. The only permanent countermeasure speculated upon was the Dagger of Mortis, the same weapon that had ended the daughter and the father. Luke recognized that without such an artifact, Abeloth could only be delayed, not eliminated. In narrative terms, Abeloth functions as the Star Wars analogue of unchecked entropy, whereas the son and daughter exemplify polarized stability, dark and light balanced under supervision. Abeloth demonstrates what occurs when a mortal seeks to embody both extremes simultaneously, unbounded chaos. Her ability to induce planetary-scale madness, to command ecosystems, to outlast direct attacks from Jedi Grandmasters, and to reform after apparent death situates her as one of the galaxy's few beings whose presence threatens not merely civilizations but the Force's structural equilibrium. She stands as proof that even the Celestials' designs were vulnerable, and that balance requires more than containment. It demands vigilance across millennia. The Sith Emperor Vitiate, Darth Vitiate, Tenebrae, Valkorion. Among mortal-born Force users, none reached a scale of influence and longevity equal to Darth Vitiate, also known across centuries as Tenebrae and Valkorion. Born as Tenebrae on the planet Medrius, he manifested dark side aptitude from earliest childhood, not through training but instinctively, bending the will of his parents and villagers with unnatural ease. By the age of 10, he had enslaved his entire community, extending his control for years without resistance. Unlike many Sith prodigies who displayed raw power but limited discipline, Tenebrae combined overwhelming Force strength with a calculating intellect that sought permanence, not mere conquest. His early rise culminated when he drew the attention of Sith rulers who recognized his potential but underestimated his ambition. Granted the title Darth Vitiate, he quickly transcended the political hierarchy of his peers. Vitiate's signature achievement was the ritual that consumed his homeworld of Nathema. Convening 8,000 Sith Lords under the guise of a collective ritual, he turned the working against them, siphoning their life essence along with the vitality of every living thing on the planet. The outcome was a barren world utterly devoid of the Force, a void unlike any other in galactic memory. This act not only demonstrated his peerless command of Sith sorcery, but also granted him functional immortality. His body ceased aging, his spirit bound itself to eternity through the sacrifice of an entire world. This single ritual elevated Vitiate beyond the scale of even great Sith of antiquity, for while others achieved longevity or spectral persistence after death, he fused eternal survival directly into his living flesh. As Emperor of the Sith, he ruled for over a millennium, consolidating his hold through absolute domination of will. His power was not limited to conventional telekinesis, lightning, or battle precognition. Vitiate's specialty was essence manipulation on a macro scale, draining life from individuals, cities, or entire planets to fuel his own reserves. He demonstrated the ability to override minds with absolute control, compelling even resistant Sith Lords to obey his directives without hesitation. More disturbingly, he could project fragments of his will into multiple avatars, operating simultaneously across distant systems, deceiving allies and enemies into believing they faced distinct individuals. In the era of the Old Republic, he adopted the guise of Valkorion, Emperor of the Eternal Empire, proving his mastery not only of the Force, but of political manipulation across cultures and centuries. Direct confrontations confirm his superiority over most opposition. Jedi strike teams that might have defeated Dark Lords of previous centuries were enthralled in his presence, unable to resist his domination. When Revan and Mitra Surik attempted to assassinate him, their combined effort was inadequate, and only betrayal by their ally, Lord Scourge, compelled by a vision of the future, prevented their complete destruction. In later centuries, Vitiate survived repeated defeats by dispersing his essence, inhabiting new vessels, and reforming his empire under new guises. His resilience to destruction marks him apart. Where other Sith might endure as disembodied spirits tethered to artifacts or locations, Vitiate actively persisted in functional bodies, continuing to influence galactic events. What separates Vitiate from even legendary Sith such as Darth Bane or Darth Sidious is not only his longevity, but his scale of intent. He did not aspire to rule an empire or crush the Jedi. His ultimate goal was to consume all life in the galaxy, to subsume the entire Force into himself. The ritual that annihilated Nathema was a prototype for this grand design, a demonstration that he could hollow out creation to fuel personal immortality. In this respect, he aligns closer to Abeloth in existential threat than to conventional Sith rivals. His capacity to command multiple identities, to drain entire populations, and to persist across more than 1,000 years situates him as one of the most powerful beings to ever exist within Star Wars continuity. Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine. Darth Sidious, known publicly as Sheev Palpatine, represents the pinnacle of Sith success in galactic history because he united overwhelming Force mastery with unparalleled political cunning. Unlike Vitiate, who ruled openly as Emperor of a Sith civilization, Sidious concealed his identity behind layers of deception, rising within the very system he planned to destroy. His apprenticeship under Darth Plagueis honed his talents in Sith alchemy, essence transfer, and the manipulation of midi-chlorians, but where Plagueis sought immortality through experimentation, Sidious refined the Sith doctrine into absolute domination over both the Force and galactic governance. His Force abilities encompassed every hallmark of dark side power at a masterful level. His command of Sith lightning exceeded any predecessor, capable of disintegrating bodies instantly or overwhelming even Yoda, the most powerful Jedi Master of his age. His telekinetic feats ranged from dueling multiple Jedi simultaneously to hurling Senate pods as weapons during his battle with Yoda. More dangerous than these combat abilities was his precognition. He clouded the collective vision of the Jedi Order, masking his presence in the heart of the Republic even while orchestrating galactic war. This concealment was not a passive cloak, but an active distortion of the Force's currents across the galaxy, keeping thousands of Jedi blind to his rise until it was too late. Sidious's mastery of Sith alchemy and dark rituals allowed him to manipulate life and death directly. He delved into Plagueis' teachings, continuing experiments on essence transfer, moving his consciousness into new vessels to avoid death. When struck down at Endor, he returned through clone bodies, sustaining himself through the dark side even as his physical forms decayed under the weight of his power. This persistence, while less refined than Vitiate's immortality, demonstrates a comparable refusal to be extinguished, a defiance of natural limits that kept his influence alive decades beyond his apparent demise. Unlike many Sith who were undone by arrogance or internal betrayal, Sidious maintained total control of his apprentices through manipulation and fear. Maul was a weapon, Dooku a pawn, and Vader both servant and eventual usurper, yet each remained bound to Sidious's schemes until the moment of rebellion. His control extended beyond individuals to entire institutions. The Grand Army of the Republic, engineered in secret under his design, executed Order 66 at his command, exterminating the Jedi in a single coordinated strike. No other Sith had ever come so close to total annihilation of their rivals. In evaluating Sidious against figures like Vitiate or Abeloth, the distinction lies in scope versus execution. Vitiate sought to consume galaxies, but often stalled in preparation. Abeloth radiated chaos but lacked sustainable control. Sidious, by contrast, successfully imposed his will on the galactic scale, dismantling a millennia-old Jedi Order, toppling the Republic, and enthroning himself as Emperor for decades. His combination of force ability, political mastery, and strategic patience situates him among the most powerful beings, not merely in raw metaphysical terms, but in realized historical impact. He did not just aspire to rule, he did rule, and in his reign, the galaxy bent fully to the dark side. Luke Skywalker and the Chosen Ones. Amidst the gallery of cosmic entities and Sith immortals, Luke Skywalker stands as the clearest example of mortal potential elevated to mythic scale. Unlike the Ones of Mortis, who were embodiments of the Force, or Abeloth, whose corruption twisted her into a being of chaos, Luke was a man born into obscurity who ascended through discipline, compassion, and unrelenting will. His power manifested not only in battlefield feats, but in the shaping of galactic destiny itself. From the moment he rejected Vader's temptation and refused to kill his father in anger, Luke redefined strength in the Force. Mastery was not domination, but restraint, the ability to yield without surrender. That single act broke Sidious's plan, setting in motion the Emperor's destruction and Vader's redemption. This is crucial because Luke's greatest victories emerge not from force displays alone, but from moral clarity fused with immense ability. His raw connection to the Force became clear early in his life. Without formal training, he could channel instinctive targeting at the Battle of Yavin, relying on the Force rather than instruments to destroy the Death Star. With Yoda, he accelerated from novice to Jedi Knight within a compressed timeline, wielding both telekinesis and precognition at levels that surpassed many trained from birth. In later legends, his feats extended beyond combat. He projected his consciousness across vast distances, engaged in duels with entities like Abeloth herself, and coordinated mass Jedi responses to threats that would have overwhelmed the Old Order. His endurance in such contests proves his standing among the most powerful mortals in Star Wars, second only to the archetypal figures chosen by the Force itself. Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, embodied the raw potential Luke later refined. Born of prophecy and conceived by the will of the Force, Anakin carried a midi-chlorian count higher than any Jedi or Sith in recorded history. His capacity was so extreme that the father of Mortis identified him as the only being capable of taking his place, regulating balance between the daughter and son. In combat, his skill bordered on overwhelming. Entire legions of droids fell before him, and few Jedi or Sith could withstand his direct assault. Yet his power, when twisted by Sidious into Darth Vader, wrought devastation on a scale unseen for centuries. The tragedy of Anakin's arc is that his extraordinary potential served the dark until the moment of his final redemption, when he fulfilled prophecy by killing Sidious and restoring balance. His significance lies not only in feats accomplished, but in potential that even the immortals acknowledged as singular. Rey, later revealed as Palpatine's granddaughter and a vessel of the Force's continuing will, represents the extension of this lineage of extraordinary potential. Her natural affinity for the Force enabled her to surpass conventional training speeds, mirroring Anakin and Luke in their accelerated ascents. By confronting Sidious Reborn, she channeled the power of generations of Jedi, embodying the collective strength of the Order's history in a single confrontation. While debates surround her placement, within narrative terms, she is aligned with the chosen archetype, one raised from obscurity, infused with exceptional potential, tasked with balancing darkness reborn. Luke, Anakin, and Rey illustrate why most powerful in Star Wars does not mean only destructive ability, but the capacity to shift the galactic current. Luke's projection of peace and endurance, Anakin's prophesied balancing act, and Rey's embodiment of all Jedi together stand alongside immortals like Abeloth and Vitiate, not because they wielded cosmic artifacts, but because the Force itself designated them as pivotal fulcrums. Their existence proves that even amid Celestials and Sith Emperors, mortal-born beings can alter the galaxy's fate through the Force's will and their own choices.